During NFL Week 11, the Washington Commanders beat the Houston Texans 23-10. And Taylor Heinicke, their quarterback, was solid once again. He was 15 for 27 passing at 191 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions, but they won. And the team played well around him. And after the game, Washington's head coach, Ron Rivera, came out and said Taylor Heinicke is our starting quarterback. And that's pretty wild. There's another way to say that, by the way. It's not just that Taylor Heinicke is our starting quarterback. The other way to say that is that Carson Wentz lost his starting quarterback job to Taylor Heinicke. And to me, that really says a lot about Carson Wentz as a quarterback and as a leader, because Taylor Heinicke has not exactly been amazing. Taylor Heinicke hasn't been bad either. But it's not like Taylor Heinicke's taking the league by storm and, leading the NFL in passing or throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every week. He runs the offense fairly well, and he's a good leader. He does like a decent job. He's a decent quarterback. I think I respect Taylor Heinicke a lot. I actually think they should keep playing Taylor Heinicke. I support this decision, for the record. Now, Taylor Heinicke has kind of a bad habit. I've got a bad habit, too. My whole life, I did the shaka, right? All through high school, I did this to people, and no one knew what I was doing. And then I moved to Hawaii, and it's like the hang loose symbol. It's a shaka. I do this to people on the road and all over grocery stores. And for the first time in my life, people started doing it back to me. And now that I'm back on the mainland, I can't stop doing it. No one knows what I give them a shaka. No one knows what I'm doing. They don't really get it. But I can't break the habit. Taylor Heinicke has a similar habit that he just can't seem to break, where about once or twice a game, he's going to make a really risky, really cringeworthy throw deep downfield where you're like, I don't know, that's a good decision. And he's like, I don't really care what you think, Zach. I'm going to force it into triple coverage. And actually, more often than not, it's worked out either with a neutral outcome or even a positive outcome. I'll never forget the throw he made a couple weeks ago to Curtis Samuel into triple coverage, where Curtis Samuel caught it for it was exactly a 49-yard touchdown. It padded his stats, made him look a lot better. And that probably shouldn't have even been a completion. But I think that suits Washington's offense, by the way. Washington has Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin, these two big physical receivers who are great at jump balls. And that's why I thought Carson Wentz was a really good fit in this offense. I thought, hey, Carson Wentz is going to take shots downfield, throw jump balls, and believe it or not, actually, Taylor Heinicke is the guy succeeding that way in Washington. It's worth noting Washington is paying Carson Wentz $28 million this year. And I would say that's a pretty hefty reason for Washington to have reasons to want to play Carson Wentz. I mean, when you're paying a guy that much money, you're not paying him to sit on the bench. Now, they have an out in his contract after this year, so Washington can say, hey, it didn't work, and just cut Carson Wentz and move on. Carson's happy. He's made over $100 million in his career, but Carson at this point is Joe Flacco. He's a guy who got a massive contract and hasn't delivered since then. And clearly, by the way, Ron Rivera believes that Taylor Heinicke gives Washington their best opportunity to win games. And it's true, by the way, he does. Washington started 1-4 this year. Since then, they've gone 5-1, and they're 4-1 with Taylor Heinicke as their quarterback. And the only loss Taylor Heinicke has, by the way, was to a team that a lot of people think is really good, Minnesota. They lost by 3. So it's not like Taylor Heinicke is 4 and a bad loss. Like, he's 4-1, and it was a game they were highly competitive in and nearly won. So I think that Taylor Heinicke clearly does bring the best out of his teammates. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you have to say this about Carson Wentz. 3 teams in a row now have not wanted Carson. 3 teams in 3 years. Philly, Indy, and now Washington. And the biggest problems for Carson Wentz, I had a funny segment the other day where I was really excited to watch Carson Wentz play against his former team, Indianapolis. And then I realized halfway through the segment, I'm like, oh my gosh, Carson Wentz is hurt. He's not even playing. And I'm like, what does Carson Wentz even do well? Right? He makes bad decisions. He gets hurt a lot. And he's got bad leadership. Like, he's good at getting hurt a lot is basically the point of that. That's what Carson Wentz is good at. He's never available. He's not an impressive leader. He's not a great decision maker. There actually isn't anything I can think of that Carson Wentz is better at than Taylor Heinicke, other than he's taller and has a stronger arm maybe and is on paper a better athlete. Although I would even argue Taylor Heinicke plays better than Carson Wentz, which is insane, but true. But here's the biggest thing. Taylor Heinicke, when you compare him to Carson Wentz, is so much better of a leader, not only because of, I guess, here's what I mean when I say that, is what I'm trying to get at. When you say Taylor Heinicke is a better leader than Carson Wentz, what I'm saying is that he gets the most out of his teammates. He's encouraging people. He's rallying the people around him. That's why people asked me on Patreon the other day, why does Taylor Heinicke seem to get the most out of his players? It's because he's encouraging. He's fighting, and he plays in a way that people respect. And clearly, the locker room supports Taylor Heinicke. And when you're a team like Washington, you're 6-5, you're trying to keep your season alive. You got Ron Rivera as a head coach, just trying to win. You got to go with not only the quarterback that gives you a best opportunity to win, but another massive factor here is you got to play the guy that the locker room supports. And if the locker room believes Taylor Heinicke is going to help them win, they're going to play harder. And it's pretty clear watching, the locker room does very much believe that Taylor Heinicke is their guy. In fact, you might have even argued they thought that going into the year because Carson Wentz came in, it wasn't great. And I would not be shocked if the attitude in Washington's locker room when Carson Wentz was brought in was people saying, why do we need this guy? We got Taylor. Carson isn't this good. Why do we even make a move for Carson Wentz? There might have been a bit of a disgruntled attitude about Carson Wentz just from the get-go. Now, I want to say this. I would go with Taylor Heinicke for a while. I think until you find your next quarterback who is a special... let's be honest. If your quarterback isn't similar to Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or any one of these guys who's really physically gifted, who's got a big arm and can run around, you're doing it wrong. And if I was Washington, my approach would be Taylor Heinicke's our guy until we find someone who's similar to Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert or Justin Fields. Or, we're looking for a really dynamic athlete who's got a big arm, who we can teach how to play quarterback. And I think the best thing you do if you're Washington, you draft a really super talented quarterback in the second or third round, let the guy develop, and when he's ready, he can supplant Taylor Heinicke as your quarterback. But Taylor Heinicke is not amazing, but he's decent. And having a decent quarterback actually, who, by the way, is cheap. You're not paying Taylor Heinicke very much. You get rid of Carson Wentz this year. I think you keep Taylor Heinicke, you pay him a modest amount of money to be your decent quarterback. And long-term, what that does is having a decent quarterback allows you the patience to wait until you find the right guy. I think it would be a monumental mistake if Washington drafted the quarterback out of Kentucky, Will Levis. I don't think physically he's got what it takes to become a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He might be solid, but I think he's like Ryan Tannehill level. He's decent and does some good stuff, but Will Levis is never going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Bryce Young might be, but Bryce Young, the quarterback out of Alabama, is going to be too high of a draft pick for Washington to get. But I think if there are guys later in the draft who are really physically gifted, Jaden Daniels out of LSU, Bo Nix out of Oregon, Adrian Martinez out of K-State, guys who you look at them today and you're like, Zach, you're crazy. They would never be the best quarterback in the NFL, but what they can do is run, and they've got big arms and can move around. And I just would want a quarterback who can run around and has got a lot of physical gifts that Taylor Heinicke doesn't. So if you're going to replace Taylor Heinicke, I would do it with a second or third round pick and a guy who is really physically gifted that eventually can develop into your franchise quarterback. That would be my approach at quarterback for Washington. And I really like Taylor Heinicke, man. He's not amazing, but I think Washington should just embrace that having a budget quarterback who's good enough gives you the freedom to pay other people and really build a great roster. And then when the day comes that you're able to draft your franchise quarterback, the guy you really believe in, he's going to be set because you're going to have a great team prepared for the day you get that rookie quarterback. And your rookie quarterback, maybe it's in the second year, when you finally get him on the field. But if you get a quarterback on a rookie contract, they're going to be so much cheaper. And that's the formula to win a Super Bowl. I know Washington is so far away from any of these problems, but I really hope Washington doesn't rush out to go get a rookie quarterback next year, because I know you want to sell jerseys and have excitement in the fan base, but I just think Taylor Heinicke's good enough. He's budget. He can win clearly, and his cheap contract allows you the financial freedom to build a really, really incredible team around him. And great teams win Super Bowls, not just great quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers is an incredible quarterback on a mediocre team, and they're losing and they're not having a good year. They're 4-7. The Packers are not a threat to win the Super Bowl. I think, frankly, Washington, if they just keep paying your quarterback a small amount and really invest in the players around Taylor Heinicke, that's going to have a better shot to win a Super Bowl than a team built like Green Bay, which is very top-heavy, where you're paying a quarterback $45 million a year and can't afford to get him receivers and get him the weapons he needs to win. So that's my 2 cents, man. I really, I don't know. Taylor Heinicke's the guy in Washington, and I have no problem with that at all.